So please welcome up Aaron McDonald.
Good morning. Well, I think Lindsay hammered home about things needing to be reliable in the IP collaboration space. So I think we're seeing some of that today. Technology was all working yesterday, so it's unfortunate that it's not today, but we'll hammer through. What I'm going to talk to you about this morning is some of those practical steps that you could take and we could take together in terms of going from the legacy switched voice networks into the IP voice networks. Some things to consider along the way, where you can get cost efficiencies and how best to maximise those cost efficiencies, and how you can think about that roadmap or that journey that you want to go on outside of just the cost aspects. So I think the first step along that journey is to be really clear about what your objectives are. Naturally, the first thing that springs to mind is we want to save money, and that's a good thing. We don't want to discourage you from that, because that's a key value driver inside of the IP voice space. All of our competition will come and talk to you about how you can save money, and so we want to be in there having that conversation with you as well. We don't want to leave that out of the mix. But I think it's important to look at both those short-term drivers and the long-term drivers. So this is a fundamental change in technology in your environment, so it's an opportunity to reassess how you want your communications to work in the future. And so looking at the cost elements, really important, but I'd encourage you to take a wider view. Look beyond that. Look at this as a moment in time where you get to choose about how you want to collaborate inside your organisation going forward. Are there other opportunities that you can take to look at how your infrastructure might need to evolve, how your architecture might need to change, what types of services that you need to deliver to your customers or to your staff? Think about our modern workspace journey that we've been talking to you all about, and if you haven't, come in and talk to us about that, to think about how you could change that paradigm. So don't look at like this as just an opportunity to save money, because it is, but look at it beyond that. So what is that going to mean for me in terms of how I connect inside my organisation going forward? Once you've got that understanding of what your objectives are at an organisational level, it's really important to understand your current environment. There's lots of things that need to change in order to move along that journey. So it's not just replacing your ISDN trunk with a SIP trunk. You've got to think about, what does my data network look like now? How does that need to change? What sort of licensing structure do I have with my voice applications? How does that need to change? What are my users going to do differently? Do they need training? All of those kind of current state things are really important to understand before you plan the next step in that journey. And so getting a really good map of what is current state in your environment and your users and your applications is really important. GNI has a process called PSI, which we would take you through, that helps you map those things out. So it looks at what's your underlying infrastructure look like. It looks at what applications are you using in your environment, and it looks at how your users are interacting with those applications and what devices are they looking at. So you can get a picture of how your network's current state is, and that can be used along with your objectives to plan how you take that forward. The next thing to do would be to map the communications journey that you want to go on. So once you've got that objectives at a business level and your current state, is to map a roadmap out. So look at that current state and say, how do we move forward? How do we want to go on those incremental steps to get to that future state? And it might be simple things first off. It might be just putting that SIP trunk in. But you're doing that with a knowledge of how you're going to end up in the end state. And what that does is it helps minimize regretful spend. You don't kind of rush headlong into something that you realize a year down the track or 2 years down the track that you want to be able to deliver a different kind of experience to your customers, or you want to be able to engage your staff in a different way, and you've put a whole lot of investment just getting that kind of 30% cost benefit up front, and then you have to go and spend more money again undoing that, unpicking it, re-architecturing your network, because you've made that choice in isolation of the roadmap that you've planned across that multi-year or multi-quarter plan. So get really clear about the roadmap before you go on that journey. Be a really strong learning we've got from customers who've kind of jumped into this, looked to get those short-term benefits and then realise, crap, there's all this other stuff I wanted to do. I've got to rebuild all of that again and change my environment again. So get that roadmap really clear. The next step we'd encourage you to take is to understand all the cost inputs. So the obvious ones are there right in front of your face. The cost of an ISDN trunk versus the cost of a SIP trunk. The cost per minute for calls, for example. Those are some of the obvious cost drivers in the mix. But there are other cost inputs and levers in there as well. So what do your data network costs look like today, and what will they need to look like to support a robust IP voice experience for your customers? What do your gateways look like today? How are they going to change? What does your licensing look like within your voice applications or your phone systems? Is your phone system capable of taking this type of technology? All of those things. Do you have real estate in your organisation that if you changed your architecture or the way you delivered services to your users, you could minimise the cost of that real estate, like we've done inside telecom, for example? Is there going to be training costs involved in moving people to that new technology? Is there a way that you can look at distributing the calls differently using this type of technology that means your answering costs are lower and you spend less time on the call and get more efficiency out of that? What is the cost of being out of business if you don't do this right? If the trunks aren't reliable and the data network that it's running over isn't reliable? So look at all of those things in the cost side of the equation, because it's important to look at the full picture to build that total cost of ownership model. The next step would be to take those cost inputs and then add them to the value inputs. So when I say value inputs, I mean things like, what is the best way to get efficiency out of IP voice? Well, one of the number one things is consolidation. That's how you get the most value out of SIP trunking, for example. It's taking disparate PSTN services spread across the country and then consolidating those into a single site that feeds over a data network. And that way your busy time on those trunks is maximised. Get the best kind of Erlang ratio, for those of you who understand what that means, from my old voice days. But it means the time that the trunk stays busy is maximised when they're consolidated. So you've got lots of trunks spread around the country that might be there for the peak of a particular site, but that ebbs and flows within those sites. If you can consolidate those, you get much better trunk efficiency. So you could have 200 lines spread out through the country. You may only need 50 or 60 of those in a single location. So you get a benefit out of just reducing the number of trunks. You get that benefit, though, by having a robust data network to carry those calls back out to those sites. And as Lindsay mentioned earlier, that's the best way to do that is using MSSA. So if you've got data and internet services at a site already, if you can send multiple services over the same access that's going to that site, then you don't need to reinvest in access in each of those sites to carry the voice services across. So consolidation of the WAN and the voice network are really important. Consolidation of the trunks are really important. Both of those two things will give you cost benefits. But there are other opportunities there as well. We talked about video, for example. The way that we've built the network means that our IP network's integrated to our video network. And so you can start to reduce other costs as well. Travel costs, for example. We've done some press releases recently with a number of large customers who are cutting significant amounts of cost out of their business by using SIP-enabled video to drive reduced travel costs and increase productivity of their workers. So all of our services in the cloud side of things can also be fed via those same networks. So it's not just about the voice and the internet and the WAN sharing the same infrastructure, but what other cloud infrastructures can you use that consolidate and travel over those same access networks to reduce cost? Video is a really cool one. Security is another one that we have. Our infrastructure cloud service is another one. Once you've got that core UFB pipe in place, you can start to consolidate a whole range of services down that one pipe. And that's really the value of UFB. And Lindsay talked to earlier the value of our solution, the way we've architected it isn't just about voice. It's about all of these other services that wrap around voice to give you an IP collaboration suite of services. I think the other thing to note is that it's not always the right thing for companies. You might get through this exercise and realise that the cost of going from where you are today to an IP voice-enabled solution might not work out for the type of architecture that you have and the type of business that you're running. You know, if you're a large organisation with lots of sites spread all over the place and those sites are kind of medium to large sites, then it's probably going to stack up really well. If you've got lots of small sites with 1 or 2 lines at each site, maybe a simple ADSL broadband internet connection, and you don't really have a requirement for anything more than that, probably the most cost-effective way is just having a few old copper lines in there. So it's important not to jump to the fact that IPs are always going to be cheaper. You've got to do the math and work out that total cost of ownership. Don't look at the headline price because that's quite deceiving depending on your architecture. So it is really looking at the whole picture before you get down to the benefit statement, I guess, in terms of whether it's going to return an investment for you. The other thing you can look at is how do users work today? I've got a desk phone out for all of these users. Do they actually need a desk phone? Maybe they don't need that anymore because we can give you an integrated IP voice experience on your mobile and your fixed line. So the users that are out there on their mobile devices can get same features and same experience as a IP desk user, but now they're on their mobile. So that cuts down another access, further consolidation. So again, look at these other value drivers, change the paradigm about how your users work to add more to that total cost of ownership, rather than just looking at the price per minute and the price per trunk. And I think the next one is how can we help? So Genai and Telecom have been doing this game for a long time, both the voice game, the IP voice game, the IP telephony game, the video game. All of these things we've been in and investing in for a long time now. Lindsay showed you how we've architected our network to take advantage not just of the lower cost per voice service that you can get from the other providers, but also to think about how you can maximize cost efficiency by changing the way that you operate and the way that you work. So I would encourage you to come and have a chat to your local sales person or the specialist, get them to come through your organisation, do one of those PSIs, map out that roadmap with you in terms of where you want your communication to be. How do you want to interact with your customers? Do you want to introduce video into that mix? You know, it's growing really strongly. Can we deliver that over your SIP trunks or via IP-centrics to your call centres or to your workers? How can we maximise the disaster recovery potential for that solution? You know, Lindsay mentioned earlier about Christchurch. We had lots of customers down there who took our hosted mobile IP-centric service during that time so they could get PBX functionality, advanced call routing, call screening and IVRs, all of that stuff delivered from the cloud. And so when things fell over in the physical access, they could pick that up by their mobiles and keep working. So have a chat to us about these different range of solutions. Come in and see our Modern Workspace Innovation Centre if you haven't already. That might give you a few tricks and tips on how you can interact differently inside your organisation, how workers can change the way that they work to drive more productivity, to get those business applications further out to the edge, and to engage better with your customers. We're here to help. We're experts in this stuff, and our sales guys in the room are equipped to have those conversations with you. So come and have those with us. Think about the total cost of ownership. Think about your communications roadmap and how you want to deliver outcomes in your business. Don't look at this as just an opportunity to cut the cost of the channel. Look at it as an opportunity to change the way that you deliver services to your organisation. It's kind of that moment in time where you can say, hey, stop, let's think, how far do we take this out? What can we do differently as an organisation? So that would be our advice from Genai, and thank you for listening.